Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sawubona, South Africa. Goeiedag. Otsihilijang. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Indaba Africa. This is Chris. And today I ask the question, are you Peter Afrikaans? Now, you may be wondering what that question is all about, but this is related to events that occurred over the past weekend in which an online video was posted reported of a South African making a vulgar comment directed towards African National Congress Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, in which the poster referred to her genitalia in a vulgar fashion. This has started an awful lot of discourse in South Africa about this event, and we'd like to talk about it a little bit this morning and discuss what the impacts of this are. Well, first off, this article appeared in The Citizen by Satuma Stone, and it's about the African National Congress's Umkhonto-we-Sizwe Military Veterans Association in Gauteng's Sedibeng region, which is on the south side of Johannesburg. They filed charges against an unidentified white male for insulting Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who, as I mentioned, is the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. In addition to this, of late, the African National Congress's Deputy Secretary Jesse Duarte and party spokesman Pule Mabe have repeatedly called for people to stop criticizing Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, also known as NDZ. Titus Mpondo from the association filed a case of crimen injuria. What is crimen injuria? Well, for folks outside of South Africa, this may be a legal charge you're unfamiliar with. Crimen injuria law is a crime under the South African common law. It is defined as the act of unlawfully, intentionally, or seriously impairing the dignity of another. Racial insults using racially offensive language and emotional or psychological abuse are considered as crimes under crimen injuria. This is an unusual law meant to protect the dignity of individuals, but it does fly in the face of freedom of speech. Of course, there are limits to freedom of speech, and we can talk about that. So what happened exactly? Well, in a video that was posted online, a white South African, we don't know if he's South African, but a white male, made a statement to Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma in which he said, "I just want to say to Dlamini-Zuma, if you think cigarettes and alcohol should only be unbanned under level 1, I'm Peter Afrikaans, you expletive." And the expletive was referring to female genitalia in a very crude and vulgar term used in Afrikaans and known throughout South Africa. And I'll leave it at that. There's no need to repeat such language here. So what exactly is going on here, ladies and gentlemen? Well, there's a few problems. First off, in South Africa, there's 4 issues that come to mind for me right off the top. Crimen injuria, in this case, perhaps that was a vulgarity and was directed at someone, and it could be punishable and chargeable as a crime of crimen injuria. But public figures are usually treated differently than you and I are, ladies and gentlemen. A public figure is open to criticism and commentary, oftentimes political satire and such. What I suggest, aside from that, is that the African National Congress and members of Umkhonto-we-Sizwe grow a thicker skin. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, thankfully, here in the United States, we have laws to protect people. Now, you can't use defamation to attack someone, but there's all sorts of political discourse that takes place when it comes to public figures. For example, Alyssa Milano, the former has-been actress, well, not former has-been, she's a current has-been, former actress from Charmed and Who's the Boss as a child. Many of us grew up watching her on television and now can't stand the sight of her tweets or her vulgar language, recently said to President Donald Trump, the serving president and head of state of the United States, "Stop calling it Chinese virus, you racist piece of feces." She didn't say feces. On Twitter, no action taken by Twitter against her, no public outcries for her to be imprisoned or charged with a crime of defamation. She also said the following: "You tear-gassed women and children, asswipe," sorry for the profanity, "and on Thanksgiving weekend, you piece of excrement, bumhole, mother effing, evil creature person," she wrote on Twitter. Nothing ever happened to Alyssa Milano, of course, and she does have freedom of speech, despite the vulgar, crass, and disgraceful, shameful commentary that she made. No one is calling for her arrest. Well, people may be calling for it, but that's not a possibility here in the United States. In January 2018, so-called comedian Chelsea Handler tweeted about Lindsey Graham, a serving senator in the U.S. Senate. She tweeted about his support for Donald Trump and claimed that Trump was blackmailing him with a gay sex tape with no substantiation whatsoever. The people on the left, who purport to be so accommodating, understanding for people, attempted to out Lindsey Graham as a homosexual How is this understanding? How is this something allowed in public discourse? But it is protected speech. In addition to that, Patti LuPone, another has-been washed-up Hollywood actress who's been a Tony winner, she attacked Senator Lindsey Graham back in July of 2019 by tweeting the following: "Lindsey Graham, you are a disgrace. On a personal note, why don't you just bite the bullet and come out? You might just come to your senses." Yet another effort to shame or attack someone based on their sexuality or purported sexuality. We don't know what Senator Graham's sexuality is. That is his personal business. But these are examples. But let's get closer to home for South Africans. Let's talk about some examples of things that never done to people who have actually violated this law of crimen injuria. The African National Congress's Youth League claimed that Helen Zille was racist and that her all-male cabinet consisted of boyfriends, I quote, boyfriends and concubines so that she can continue to sleep around with them. This comment, which was vulgar and personally injurious to a public figure, no consequences. So the African National Congress's Youth League can make this vulgar statement in the public sphere and get away with it. And they weren't alone. Members of the African National Congress in Parliament made similar comments, no consequences whatsoever. The exact organization now so offended by the comments directed against Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma also made such comments against Helen Zille a few years ago. The Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association restated the Youth League's sex claims and warned that it would launch a political program aimed at rendering the Western Cape ungovernable. Now, how is that even reasonable? And how is that not chargeable under crimen injuria? If an unknown person who posted a video and said something vulgar in criticizing a public figure can be charged. Now, that is interesting. Never mind the language, the sort of crass, disgusting language that comes out of the mouth of people like Julius Malema, who's famously sung songs to murder white South Africans, gone on Polish television to give an interview in which he said that we don't intend to kill all of the whites yet. This terroristic language is not punished in South Africa. And of course, remember that this is the same man that has nothing to do with Nelson Mandela Bay, other than the fact he was the national party leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, interjected himself into the mayoral situation in Nelson Mandela Bay in an effort to unseat Athol Trollop because he was from the Democratic Alliance. Malema was quoted as saying, because the mayor of DA in PE is a white man, so these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. What people are referring to? Whites? Democratic Alliance? Your political opponents? Go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you've touched a white man. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness. How is such language not racist, and how is it not injurious to the victim who was attacked here? In this case, later, through subterfuge and betrayal, the EFF broke apart the coalition, the ruling coalition, which included the EFF at one stage along with Democratic Alliance in Nelson Mandela Bay. And now the African National Congress once again rules that metropolitan, and we see the outcome as service delivery is abysmal and corruption is back up from where it once was, lowered during Democratic Alliance administration. So the first problem is this even criminal? Well, perhaps it could be because of the vulgarity of it under the statute. But once again, I suggest that politicians and those in the public sphere grow a bit thicker skin. When you are a public figure like this, you live by different rules. That's just the way it is. Ask Donald Trump. He certainly knows that you live by different rules when you're in the public sphere like that. Is it racist? Not in the least. And this is quite disturbing. There's no racist reference in there, no calling for one race over another in the video whatsoever. The conflation of criticism with racism is racist in itself. The comments by Mpondo and these other officials from the MK Military Veterans Association are, by their very nature themselves, racist, attributing criticism, legitimate criticism, to questionable actions by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, such as this bizarre ban on cigarettes with no justification whatsoever. Criticism of legitimate public policy in the public sphere on social media cannot possibly be racist. There's nothing in there. That's an inference on the part of these ANC members that it's racist simply because the person uttering it was white. That doesn't make it racist. This person called no racist charge whatsoever here. And it's quite disturbing that every time that the African National Congress and its affiliates find themselves under pressure in South Africa, that they immediately resort to throwing the racist bone out there in an effort to bifurcate black and white, colored and Indian South Africans and divide them on the basis of skin pigmentation. It's reprehensible. It's disgusting. And fortunately, the African National Congress, the main part of the party, Luthuli House, is not echoing these comments. If they did, they would be roundly criticized for that. But the Veterans Association should be taken to task for its racist comments Its very comments are racist in themselves. Titus Mpondo, his very filing of this case is racist. And he wrongly calls the person's criticism racism. It's not. It's criticism. It's vulgar criticism. It was over the top and unnecessary by whoever Peter Afrikaans is. Interesting, Peter spelled the Anglophone way of Peter, not Peter as in Afrikaans, P-I-E-T-E-R, but no, Peter as in P-E-T-E-R, Afrikaans. So that in itself is a problem. Thirdly, the South African Police Service and or the Hawk should be filing charges against the MK Military Veterans Association Regional Cederberg Director or Secretary, that's Bafana Mahalale, for his terroristic threats. And I read to you what he said. Now, this gentleman said the following here. He said that we fought for this country and our freedom was never free, as some were imprisoned, some were exiled, others died. This sudden emergence of racist arrogance shall not be tolerated. We are fracas and proud. We shall defend the gains of non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic South Africa at whatever cost. Now, this is a threat. Now, one could say it's political discourse, but it's clearly a threat. And what's the purpose of the threat? The irony is the gentleman is making a statement that is completely opposite of everything he said. He says, we fought for non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa. Well, this is certainly not a democratic action, and it's certainly non-racial. You've racialized the entire situation. The gentleman did make something that was sexist. He made a sexist, vulgar comment. That's the only part of that's legitimate. And the fact that you fought for the country, so what? What does that have to do with this issue? It's not germane. This is not germane. So these statements here are quite disturbing from the MK officials in the area of Johannesburg. And finally, this entire situation is disturbing, ladies and gentlemen, and the world needs to pay attention to what's happening in South Africa. Pay close attention. We certainly paid attention in the dying days of apartheid, and with international sanctions and pressure, diplomatic pressure on the National Party and on the liberation movements, apartheid finally ended in South Africa. But today the world is silent while similar injustices take place in South Africa. In South Africa, not everyone is equal before the law. Penny Sparrow, Vicky Momberg, convicted of crimes under crimen injuria, and Vicky Momberg sentenced to prison over this. But economic freedom fighter, party leader Julius Malema can run about and say the most disgusting and bizarre things. The African National Congress's Youth League and its Veterans Association for MK can say vile, sexist things about the opposition party leader, Helen Zille, several years ago with no consequences. Not everyone is equal under law in South Africa. That was the case during apartheid, and the world turned its head in revulsion at that concept. Where is the world's attention now? Where is Human Rights International? Where is Amnesty International? Or Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International? Where are they at? Where is the United Nations Commission on Tolerance? Where are all these actors? Quite silent in the face of what's happening in South Africa. Now, I do not mean to imply, nor am I stating, that the actions of the African National Congress are directed solely at white South Africans. No, they're directed at all opponents, and opponents who are black or colored or Indian, who make similar statements or complain or criticize the government are also targeted and often called racist in themselves, which is quite ironic. But nonetheless, this is a very serious situation in South Africa. It is time for the world to lift the veil and start seeing what's really happening in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, the four key issues in this Peter Afrikaans video situation are, is it even a crime, crimen injuria? Perhaps it is. That would be for a court to decide if a case is filed, and apparently a case has been filed. Is it racist? No, it's not racist. It's vulgar, and it's misogynist, potentially. One could argue that, but it's not racist. The conflation of racism and injecting race into every part of the public sphere has become the default mechanism of the African National Congress and its affiliates throughout society, whether it's compliant and complicit media who go along with them, whether it's compliant and complicit major sector of the industrialized economy and big corporations that go along with the ANC and its conduct, or it's its subsidiaries and its affiliates, such as the Youth League and Nkosazana Veterans, Military Veterans Association. All of these folks are racializing everything in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, things are happening in South Africa that the world needs to pay attention to from across the board. Those not in power are frequently discriminated against, and those trying to help other South Africans in need are discriminated against as well, while the government seeks to be the only source of support for people who are suffering under the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 lockdown. These are disturbing events in South Africa and things that the world should pay attention to. The third issue here was that, in fact, the South African Police Service and or the Hawks should be filing criminal charges against Bafana Mahale for his terroristic statements and his threats against other South Africans. And once again, finally, the last point here is that it appears that not all South Africans were equal before the law, which of course flies in the face in contravention of South Africa's constitution, which was promulgated and drafted under a democratic government in 1996 and enacted in 1997 in post-apartheid South Africa. So all people, all South Africans, in the spirit of the Freedom Charter of 1955, should be equal before the law, without regard to race, gender, religious affiliation, or ethnicity. Yet we can legitimately question whether that's the case today, as we see people make misogynist comments attacking Helen Zille with no consequences. Yet a gentleman who posted a video online, we don't even know if he's South African, we don't even know who this person is, they can't identify it. So these angry members of Umkhonto we Sizwe's Military Veterans Association have sought to resort to the government to hunt down someone for a crass and vulgar comment. I ask, is this the best use of police resources at a time when the country is imploding, its economy is collapsing, South Africans are hungry, innocent law-abiding South Africans are harassed on their property, handcuffed and dragged away in armored vehicles as if this is Sharpeville in 1960 or Soweto in 1976 or 1985, with the army and police out and about the streets. The miracle of the Rainbow Nation, if it existed, certainly seems to be fragile or fractured in this day and age under ANC's capricious governance in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you found this video interesting or at least thought-provoking. If you did, I ask that you take a moment, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please feel free to subscribe to the channel by pushing that button right down there. And be sure to push the notifications icon, the little bell there, so you get notifications of my future videos, my live streams, and my regularly scheduled Saturday live stream where I usually have a guest. That's 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here in the US, and 5 p.m. in Gaborone or Johannesburg, 4 p.m. in London and Abuja. I cover all of Africa here on Indaba Africa, but this video is on South Africa specifically. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the section below the video. Leave your questions and comments. I'll do my best to answer all of them. If you leave abusive commentary, if it's entertaining, I might respond, but I ask that you don't leave abusive commentary. And finally, I ask that you smash that like button down there because that helps drive viewership. And as I said, this is an issue that needs attention. What's going on in South Africa, what the African National Congress is up to, and what's happening with its governance. While the world's press sycophantically and continuously reports that South Africa has done a brilliant and amazing job with its early and its effective lockdown, I think we can legitimately question how effective the lockdown has been as the cases continue to rise in South Africa and people are impoverished. Jobs are disappearing by the tens, hundreds, thousands, perhaps even millions of jobs evaporating around us. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a production of the Indaba Africa Group, and I thank you for your time. God bless, and have the best of days.